Now, this is going to be a shocking story. Lisa Simpson is actually part of my commentary today in an interesting way. Let me do it this way. I'm gonna just play the video. This is about a family who is brokenhearted, upset about the way the death of their loved one was treated by the woman who played, Lisa Simpson. Here it is.
So Larry has been shot in the head, and head wounds usually bleed a lot. Is there blood everywhere at this crime scene?
So he's kind of slumped down as he's sitting back against a tree, and there's blood on the back of the tree, kind of behind where Larry's head would have been if his head was upright, but he's kind of slumped over. And so it's hard to tell exactly at this point where the entry wound or if there is an exit wound or not, but you can definitely tell that it's a head wound. And based on the amount of blood, a pretty significant one.
And is there a trail of blood at all, or is it all just right there where Larry's body's found?
It's all right there. The only blood that's not on him or his person is on the tree that he's sitting up against. Again, where his head would have been leaned back as he's sitting there. So just a little bit of transfer on the trunk of the tree, but then everything else is on his person.
Now imagine they're talking about your dead father, your dead uncle, your relative. They're talking about your relative in violation of department policy. They're giving these details on a podcast in the local community that happens to be a very popular podcast. The person who's in charge of the podcast is the voice of Lisa Simpson. Let's put it up full mass here. There's some entanglement that must be exposed. A family is now broken, according to them, by their father's killing being exposed to further scandalize him and the family by police on a true crime podcast from Springfield, Oregon. The voice of Lisa Simpson, Yeardley Smith, she hosts a true crime podcast, Small Town Dicks, with her husband and who is a retired cop. He's a retired detective in that same department. So he gets access to this information and then talks about it freely and openly as if it's okay. It's not a violation of policy. And her brother-in-law, a current detective, okay? All right. At the outset of this, the episode began and they boasted about certain things and talked and they discussed standards on the show in the beginning of the program. Now, I'm doing this not because I'm somehow anti-Miss Smith's podcast. Madam, I didn't know you had a podcast. And I'm doing the story in the spirit of advocacy for the family. And I'm going to give you the narrative, madam, that they say you and others refuse to listen to, especially the police. They will be heard here. Here's the podcast claim of having respect for the victims they talk about. Here it is.
So we want to know, how did we persuade you to join us here on Small Town Dick?
Oh, it was a lot of arm twisting.
Not the truth.
Well, what has always impressed me about Small Town Dicks is the professionalism. First, you have your authenticity. Dan and Dave, myself, we come out of real crime. We've had real experiences. And so the audience, the listeners, are getting from Small Town Dicks what actually happens out there, not something that's been glamorized. But also, you guys don't exploit the cases. You're empathetic to the victims. And this is what I'm all about. And I know that people who know me from other projects, they will truly see that when they start listening to Small Town Dicks.
Oh yeah? Is that what the family is saying about this obvious ethical issue connected to the police department and cops that are retired and not? So here's the thing. Right now, for those of you who will watch this on the podcast, maybe you're a producer, maybe you're one of the hosts, maybe you're one of the detectives. And right now you're thinking, well, we're going to have to come back at him. I would not advise that. I'm from Glenwood. But if you choose to, I will happily invite you to the show so we can talk about this openly. But before you make that conclusive and probably unwise decision, let me break down the family's point of view. Let's put them up full mass here. The episode we heard ran afoul of the victim's family. The detective in their father's case is Justin Myers. Described the victim's gruesome death. He's in a hug with his family. His son Evan describes his father Richard Marshall as a bearer of a man who would do anything to provide for his family and give anything of himself for his community. They loved him. He loved them. Richard Marshall worked as a guard, a community garden and neighborhood farm. Springfield, Oregon is a town of about 60,000 and was once home to Simpsons creator, Matt Groening. Now, Springfield's most famous resident is Miss Smith, the voice of Lisa Simpson. Here she is with her fellow podcasters. There they go. Richard's daughter, Lauren, wrote to Indisputable to complain about the podcast benefiting from the death of their father. We did something that you all obviously did not do. We took the time to listen. We're thoughtful about this process. We took the time to listen. Now, this is not typically one of the social justice stories we have covered. It's a little bit out of the box, but it fits. It fits. There's more. Richard's daughter, Lauren, wrote to us, said Miss Smith, in my opinion, has taken advantage of her husband's relationship. He is a retired detective at the station. Of her husband's relationship with the police and investigators in my dad's death. She's monetizing people's tragedies without regard. When my brother contacted the podcast to ask questions like, why wasn't our family consulted or even advised of the podcast? He was dismissed with, we're not out to re-traumatize or victimize anyone. I can't stop crying, can't sleep. And when I do, I have dreams of gun violence. Now, once again, I gotta remind you, this is an extremely popular podcast in that local community, very. So it's not as if this was done in some kind of silo or in a corner and they discovered it later. This is popular. This podcast is well known and well viewed. Lauren says her father did not want his life to be about making money. My family is outraged, she says. My family is outraged as my dad was an anti-capitalist, questioned everything pacifist, who protested the Vietnam War, took me to protest the Gulf War in the 90s, and taught me that Black Lives Matter in the 80s before it was a thing. Lauren's brother, Evan, gained hundreds of pounds since his father's death and has been unable to leave his home. When Springfield residents quickly deduced the murder victim, they told Evan the podcast was hashing out the gory details of his dad's death. He says he was re-traumatized and reached out to the podcast. Let's put it up. There we go. What does it say? Why is Lisa Simpson talking about the murder of my father on a podcast without reaching out to us? We haven't even laid him to rest yet. Due to my disability, my PTSD is fully out front of me again. Really, I am so disappointed with all involved. What's the response? Mr. Marshall, this is Detective Dan from the podcast. I'm happy to speak to you and any of your blah, 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 blah. All right. Honestly, what Evan Marshall said, honestly, if they had just reached out to us beforehand, it might have been fine. We could have told them not to use the goofy name Larry to refer to my father. I'm still dealing with the aftermath of this. We haven't even buried him. If there's not a rule now, there should at least be something done to prevent this from happening again. So we decided to look at the police media policy because naturally only the details could be released by the cops. So let's put it up. The police shared their media policy, which states that a designee shall be appointed to handle media relations for major events, including murder investigations. They also are supposed to protect the identity of the victims in ongoing investigations. It's right there in black and white. Their own policy. It's right there. We found it. I'm sure the podcast could have got it also. Evan Marshall filed a complaint with the Springfield police about Detective Justin Myers and his participation in the podcast in December. Here is the department's response to that complaint, okay? Dear Evan Marshall, the Springfield Police Department's Office of Professional Standards has received your complaint regarding your observation of an SBD staff member on November 18, 2022. We will investigate this under a matter and respond to you without findings in no more than 30 days, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so you all are the police. You all are detectives. Did you all hear the podcast? Did you get a copy of it? Did you subpoena the records? Did you go and ask a question? Do you have a formal statement? Did you do any police work whatsoever when you were confronted about the actual violation of policy in your local community? No, we're not. A representative of the department wrote Evan on December 17th that they needed 30 days to investigate. All right, that's what they said. A member of the podcast has since told Evan they would have spoken with Evan, but now there's an investigation. So they cannot comment because Evan made a big deal about a big deal. Put up the picture of the police chief. That is Andrew Shearer, who is the person in charge. A representative of the department has reached back to Indisputable for clarification, but has not yet commented. The podcast did not respond to our request for comment. I'm doing this because you cannot care more about turning a damn story than the people you're talking about. We have this dilemma too at Indisputable. Yes, we have it. Many times I have talked to my investigative producer and I've said, listen, talk again to the whistleblower. Let's make sure they're safe. Let's make sure they're okay with this content. Let us think about it. Let's put pause on it. I don't want to turn a story for the sake of turning a story. I want to make sure that you're okay with it. It was simple. And then you ignored them. All right, so we shall see what the response is now. It's on the record. Max, thoughts?
This to me is one of the big problems of podcasts, social media now, is that we're sort of turning people's lives into content with complete disregard for them. I mean, this is not ancient history. This is something where these people have to go to the grocery store, walk around their community, and see people who have seen the worst details of their lives put out by someone who's never spoken to them, never made an attempt to talk to them, never cared, and now feels put upon that they've been asked to apologize for that. It's incredibly disturbing the way we have sort of farmed this trauma of other people for influence and for content. And then when we turn to law enforcement for some sense of privacy, some sense of protection from what can easily be considered harassment, the police don't care at all. I mean, it does show you that there is an immense amount of privilege in this podcast and people who have not themselves been victims of violence, because no one who has felt that trauma would ever feel like they were right in putting another family through it.
Right, there you go, very well said.